In this example, we're going to be taking a look at the faster or thrashier style of Metallica's music, akin to songs such as Blackened or Battery. Key things we'll be looking at are power chords and extended power chords, down picking as well as alternate picked gallop rhythms. So I'll play the riff up to speed and slow down. Now make sure that you're warmed up because we're using pretty high tempos. Alright, this is a pretty involved and intricate riff to play because there's a lot going on in terms of technique and what we're using. So let's zoom in on those things and take a look at them. The first thing we encounter in this riff is the gallop rhythm at the beginning before hitting the power chord. So this is something you might want to isolate because it's pretty hard to do at high tempos. So just slow it down to somewhere around this tempo. And make sure you're using your wrist as opposed to your whole arm. You'll get a lot more endurance that way and keep your stamina level quite high. Also make sure your forearm is really warmed up for all this picking stuff. There's also something you could do called a reverse gallop, where instead of doing it on the upbeats, you do it on the downbeats. This is something to play around with. When practicing this, start slow and then gradually build your speed. Along with gallop style picking, we also have straight alternate picking after which is something you want to be very aware of, getting control of straight 16th notes. Once again, start slow and then build up the speed gradually. Along with low chugging on the low E string, we're also incorporating power chords and single notes to break up the riff, which are mostly played with downstrokes, which is a big part of James Hetfield's style. And something you also want to practice slowly and build up speed on. Once again, also use the wrist to make sure your forearm is really warmed up for this. Before the first time the riff repeats, we get this single note melody before the riff turns around and repeats itself. This uses exclusive down picking as well, and features a pedal tone feel where we're playing a melody with a bass note under that, just to give it, which is a big key part of Metallica's sound and also generally thrash metal and metal. Before the riff repeats a second time, we see this, which are extended power chords. So instead of just going, we're adding another note below that chord to give them the chords some more depth. James Hetfield uses this a lot just to make the chords sound bigger than they actually are. The lower you go, of course, the heavier it sounds. And added palm muting will make that sound even heavier if you want to use that in your own playing. Key things you want to think about practicing this riff is keeping everything quiet. Seeing as we're on the low strings and not playing any of the higher strings, you want to make sure your pinky, or the fingers you're not using, are muting the rest of the strings along the bridge, while the palm, this part, or the palm of that side, the meat of your hand, is resting along the lower strings of your guitar so that it's ready to get palm muting in place. For palm muting, this is something you want to experiment with to get a really good tone, because if you go too far off the bridge, you find you're not really palm muting at all, and if you go too far up towards the neck, you find the note starts to cut off, which you can also use as an effect, and players have done this. But you want to find that sweet spot where you get a percussive sound, but also retain the note definition. Also in palm muting, experimenting with how hard you press against the strings to get meaner tones is a good thing to explore. You'll find the pitch will elevate slightly, especially on guitars with floating bridges, but this sometimes does add a little bit more grit or meanness to the tone. The other key thing to be aware of is the fact that there's a lot going on and we're changing through a lot of techniques fairly quickly. We're not just sticking to any one technique, such as galloping or alternate picking or just power chord chugging. We're going in and single notes, using downstrokes. We're using all of these things and changing between them quite quickly, as you can see in the transcription. And so you want to practice each section separately and get everything tight, and then put them together slowly so that you can get the techniques under your hand and make sure you can ride between them pretty seamlessly.